How do I get over my fear of speaking Spanish? How do I memorize all of these verbs? Where do I even find time to learn, and where can I find resources? I'm answering all of these questions from you and more coming up. Hola amiguitos, bienvenidos a otro video. If you're new here, welcome. I am Erica, and here we're all about giving you conversational Spanish lessons as well as language learning tips and tools. So welcome to our first Q&A session. You guys are constantly asking me wonderful questions, so we may as well just make this a series. I have several questions that I want to get through today, but since I do want to be thorough with the answers, I will likely divide this up into two parts. So make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you do not miss part 2 and all the videos to come in this series. So our first question comes from John, and John asks, how do I get over the fear of speaking Spanish because I don't know enough vocabulary or remember verb conjugations? Okay, so this is really 3 questions in one, so I'll try to break this down into 3 parts. So first of all, we have the fear of speaking, which is something that a lot of people struggle with. I mean, I would venture to say that most of us struggle with this to some degree when we're beginning to learn a language. But if your fear is so deep that it really is preventing you from just getting out there, and it's going beyond those little nerves and butterflies in your stomach that you feel when you're doing something new for the first time, then it may be a bit more deeply rooted. Some people have honestly had bad language learning experiences in the past. They've had teachers that haven't been supportive. Some people have even been made fun of by their teachers, which I honestly can't imagine, or something that's just holding them back. Some people have felt shame because perhaps they are of Hispanic descent, but have grown up in a household where only English is spoken and so haven't developed a fluent level of Spanish. So I honestly would suggest that if you're struggling with any of those things, write them down, take a look at them, and make a conscious decision to leave those things in the past. You are going to move forward from here on. So my second suggestion is to find supportive people. I mean, if you have acquaintances, people around you that make fun of your efforts to speak Spanish, move on from those people. I'm not saying just ditch them completely, but don't practice with them. Ain't nobody got time for that. You need to find people who are understanding of what you're trying to do, who support you. And if you really don't have anyone around you, then go online. Technology has opened up so many doors now. Find tutors and exchange partners that are willing to support you, guide you, and not judge you. So you also mentioned that part of your fear of speaking is due to not knowing enough vocabulary. So this is a separate subject. We want to always be trying to acquire more vocabulary in our target language, but we want to go a little more specific than that. Saying that we want to learn more vocabulary is kind of like saying, I want to be a professional sports player. The question that would likely follow that statement is, well, which sport? Even though we would all love to be the best at everything, often people who are professional sports players, even those that seem to have a general athletic ability for many sports, many of them started with a keen interest in 1 or 2 sports and kind of grew from there. There are certain abilities like stamina and speed and focus that carry across many sports. So a lot of people who master one find that they're pretty good at another one as well. So the same applies to vocabulary. First, choose a specific subject that you're very interested in, whatever that may be. Focus on acquiring vocabulary in that subject, kind of mastering it, so that you can easily have a conversation with someone about this one thing. It really is helpful for the confidence level to focus on one thing. If you're interested in cooking, do that. If you're interested in sports, learn sports related vocabulary, how to have a conversation about your local sports team with someone. So pick a subject that is interesting to you and just take in a lot of vocabulary related to that subject. You can watch YouTube videos, listen to podcasts, watch TV shows. There are so many ways. And as you learn new vocabulary, you can make flashcards of those. There are so many ways to acquire that vocabulary. Practice with it, have real conversations. And the thing is, while you're working on that one subject, all of those words, those 1,000 coveted most used words in Spanish, are naturally going to be coming up over and over again. So as you master being able to have a conversation talking about this thing, you're naturally going to be working on your ability to eventually be able to say whatever you want to in Spanish. So the third part of your question has to do with memorizing verb conjugations. Stop trying to memorize verb conjugations. That would be my number one piece of advice. Now, are those verb conjugation charts helpful? Sure. You can have your grammar book as a reference, but if you're just going through your day, like voy, vas, vamos, van, fui, fuiste, that's not an effective way to learn. Your brain will discard that information as something that's not useful. But when you're listening to those words and naturally obtaining them through conversation, imitating them, putting them all together in context, that is a much more brain-friendly way to learn. Now, if you're at a more advanced level and there just happens to be a certain verb that you really want to master all of the conjugations of, that's fine, but I do suggest taking those individual verb conjugations and giving them some sort of context. I suggest putting them into a story, writing your own little simple story and putting all of those different conjugations of the verbs into the story correctly. That is going to be a much more useful way of learning the verbs. Question number 2, Marcel asks, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing any names. Marcel says, is there a list available of Spanish songs that I can use, as well as easy to understand Spanish books, podcasts, etc.? I do have a list of resources available in the Spanish Fluency Blueprint, so you can definitely download that below. Some of those resources are literally the ones that I used when I was learning Spanish, but I've tested them all and they're all really beginner friendly, or even for the intermediate stage, to begin hearing Spanish in a very clear way. By the way, guys, if you have a question for me, be sure to leave it down here below in the comments. I'll likely answer straight away, but if we need to go further into depth, then I may include the question in one of these Q&As. So our next question says, how do you improve when there are very few local Spanish speakers? So what I love about this question is that you recognize that in order to really master Spanish, you must have real conversations with real people. Self-study is excellent and necessary, but you have to have those conversations in order to truly progress to fluency. So if you don't have anyone around you locally to practice with, then take it online. One of my favorite resources is italki. I love that you can get really specific about what kind of tutor or language exchange partner you're looking for. You can narrow it down by country, which may be helpful if you're wanting to move to or visit a certain place. You may prefer a teacher that can give you a bit of insight into that culture and that accent. You can also narrow things down based on what other languages your tutor speaks. So maybe you want a tutor who speaks English so that in case you get stuck, they can help you out in that way. Maybe you prefer that your tutor not speak English so that you don't even have that fallback option. You can control all of that in the options. You can choose whether you want a certified professional teacher or more of a community teacher. You can even choose things based on subject. So maybe you want a tutor who is specialized in business or kids. Maybe for your kids you're wanting lessons. Perhaps you just need a general tutor or conversational practice. So all of that you can control within italki. So italki is a really excellent resource. I have a link below if you want to give it a try. Our next question says, can I learn Spanish within 2 years? Well, the short answer is yes, of course you can. The longer answer would be, I caution you on setting such a broad goal like that, unless you really have very specific goals in between there. So as we talked about in my last video, when we're learning a language or really doing anything that's big, that's going to require quite a bit of time, our goals need to be specific and measurable. So saying I want to speak Spanish in 2 years, we have a time frame on that, but the goal of speaking Spanish is very general. What do you mean by that? Do you want to be conversational? Do you want to be able to work in a certain field? Do you want to achieve C2 level of advanced Spanish? So just saying you want to speak Spanish is very broad. Instead, we need to get very specific. For example, let's say in 3 months, I know I'm having a family dinner with my grandparents who only speak Spanish. In that 3-month time, I want to be able to converse with them, to tell them about what is going on in my life, what I'm doing, what I'm working on. I'm even going to prepare some possible follow-up questions that they may have and be able to answer those as well. So this is a very specific goal. And when that goal is achieved, even if you struggle a little bit through it, you've achieved it. It's something that you can mark off. And during that time that you're working to prepare that goal, you're learning a lot of Spanish that's going to go way beyond that family dinner. Here's another one. If you want to improve your listening practice and you decide within a month, I really want to be able to tune my ear to understand more of what native speakers are saying to me, this is what I'm going to do to accomplish it. So these are very specific goals that have a date and have a purpose, and you can literally choose your resources as far as how you're going to work on that thing. And if you, within this 2-year time frame that you're wanting to learn Spanish, if you set smaller goals, 1 to 3 to 6 month goals of things that you want to accomplish, by the end of those 2 years, yeah, your Spanish is going to be amazing, but you have to start with smaller goals. Okay, I'm going to group the next 2 questions together because they are very similar. So we have, how do you start to use grammar without questioning yourself? And also, how can I memorize these verbs and tenses? It's holding me back. Most of the time I can memorize present tense, but that's it. So, as I mentioned earlier, stop trying to memorize list of verb conjugations. Perfect grammar should not be your first concern. By that, I don't mean that it's unimportant. I want you to be able to form perfectly structured sentences in Spanish and for everything to be correct. That is my ultimate goal for you, and I'm here to help you with that. But in the beginning, even if you're having to fall back on the infinitive form of the verb without even conjugating it, or you're not sure if you should be using the preterite or the imperfect past tense in this certain sentence, it doesn't matter. Just speak. You're going to be understood anyway, very likely. And if you follow my suggestions for your study plan, then the grammar is going to come naturally. You're just going to have to be patient. Our next question, how do you find time for learning Spanish? Well, make sure that this is something that you really want to do to the point that you're willing to prioritize it at least at some level. If so, then determine what level you're at, what you need to be focusing on at that level, and make a specific plan. Gather your resources and then determine how long you want to work on that every day. Start small. Carve out a bit of time for dedicated, focused study. This could be 20 minutes a day in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening, 10 minutes in the morning, and 10 minutes in the evening. Start small. If you're focused and uninterrupted, you'll be able to learn a lot just in that time frame. Also, make sure that you're utilizing other time periods, such as commutes to work, workouts, your 30-minute lunch break, to be working on your Spanish. You can be listening to podcasts during that time. During your lunch break, you may be able to hop on for a 30-minute conversation on italki with a tutor. There are really so many options. You want to make sure that you're utilizing all of that time within the day that you may otherwise be kind of wasting, and put that towards your goal of speaking Spanish. Try to form a habit of consistency. So try to do something with the language every day. Even if it's 5 minutes. Doing something for 5 minutes is much better than nothing at all, because you are forming a habit, and that consistency is what you really need to learn a language. Guys, we're going to wrap it up for part 1 so that we don't go too long. But in the meantime, while you wait on part 2, definitely grab your free copy of the Spanish Fluency Blueprint. This is a step-by-step self-study guide that is going to 10x your Spanish fluency. You can apply these steps at any level. All you need to do is adjust your resources. And I've even included a list of resources in that guide as well. So definitely take advantage of that. It's free, it's packed with massive value, and it allows you to start taking action starting today. If you have a question that you don't want to leave below for any reason, then feel free to DM me on Instagram, Facebook, email me through my contact page on my blog. I'll leave all of that information down below. I'm everywhere and there are many options to get a hold of me. I really enjoyed this, guys. If you have as well, let me know about it. Give me a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that we can see each other again soon. Hasta la próxima. Que estén bien.